think the first thing to say is it's complicated. There's no simple answer to the problems, because you're in a world where media consumption is so fractured. You still have a huge reliance on pay TV income for the majority of big leagues and teams. But you have a very different attitude for startups and for smaller teams and leagues. But I think capturing that fan data and having the flexibility to act on it is really important, and I think if there's one challenge that I sort of see all the time is that people sort of see their digital strategy and social media strategy as marketing and building their brand, but connecting that with actual monetization of audience, is the real challenge. And, there's clearly now a series of growth lines in terms of your revenue that can come through digital monetization, but it's not necessarily straightforward, publish and get paid for it. It's far more about understand what your audience wants and then be able to provide that to them in a way that they feel comfortable about consuming.
Actually, that's super interesting, right? Because there's always this conversation that we have with organizations, which is, oh, LiveLight can be a great cherry on the cake. And we want to tell them we want to be much more than a cherry on the cake, right? We want to work with you on delivering value. On the private equity side, how important is the reach compared to the first-party data capture?
Yeah, I think, where I live now in Silicon Valley, so much of it revolves around talking about private equity and how they're connecting with the sports industry, which is clearly a massive growth trend. And a lot of the conversations look really complicated from the outside, but when you get down to them, it's fundamentally about addressable audiences. How much do you know that audience? How much can you scale that audience, and how can you monetize that audience? And those are the sort of fundamental principles that underline a lot of private equity valuations. They want data points. They want proof points. Just saying, I've got a great sports product and I have 100,000 fans, really doesn't mean anything if you can't show how you can monetize those fans and how you can build an audience with it. You look at the sort of general trend of monetization, and everything used to rely on the big broadcast check that came out of the sky. And no one really understood how a broadcaster got to that number on the sports league side. It was just, it needs to be up. It's a commercial negotiation. It's based on competition. But increasingly now you've got that second line of monetization, which is how do you touch your fans? How do you transact with them in a way that it's authentic? You're building loyalty, you're building interest, you're making them care more about what you do. And then the byproducts of that is how do you then monetize that care through a variety of different products?